Winter, 1977. Château de Rouville Studios, a 19th-century castle-turned-recording studio in the French countryside, about 30 miles north of Paris. It was past midnight. The Bee Gees, brothers Barry, Maurice, and Robin Gibb, were working on a soundtrack for a film they hadn't seen, a disco movie called Saturday Night Fever. They'd already written a few songs, but the film's producer, Robert Stigwood, wanted one more. Something urgent. Something that could drive the movie's energy. Something with a beat you couldn't ignore. Barry Gibb sat at the piano, exhausted. Maurice paced the room, drumsticks in hand. Robin listened, arms crossed, thinking. They had a deadline. They needed a song. And they had no idea they were about to write one of the most iconic tracks in music history. A song that would define disco, save their careers, and, decades later, literally save lives during CPR. This is the story of Stayin Alive. Before I share this incredible story with you, if you want to discover the real stories behind music's most iconic songs, the late-night sessions, the creative breakthroughs, and the accidents that became legendary, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because what I'm about to tell you is the story of how three brothers wrote a song in one night that would outlive them all. By 1977, the Bee Gees were at a crossroads. They'd been making music since the late 1950s, starting as child performers in Manchester, England, before moving to Australia. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, they'd had success with ballads and soft rock. To love somebody. I started a joke. How can you mend a broken heart? Beautiful songs. Emotional songs. But by the mid-1970s, their sound felt dated. Rock was getting harder. Punk was emerging. And the Bee Gees, three brothers singing harmonies in matching outfits, seemed out of step with the times. Their albums weren't selling. Radio stations weren't playing their new material. Critics dismissed them as has-beens. The Bee Gees had their moment, one review said. But that moment is over. Barry Gibb, the eldest brother and the group's primary songwriter, was frustrated. "We've always evolved," he said in a 1976 interview. "But maybe the world doesn't want us anymore." Then Robert Stigwood called. Stigwood was a powerful music and film producer who'd managed the Bee Gees since the 1960s. He was producing a film, a low-budget drama about working-class kids in Brooklyn who escaped their troubles through disco dancing. The film was called Saturday Night Fever, and it was set to star a young TV actor named John Travolta. Stigwood needed a soundtrack, and he wanted the Bee Gees to write it. Barry was skeptical. "We're not a disco band," he told Stigwood. "We've never done disco." "Then start," Stigwood replied. The Bee Gees reluctantly agreed. They flew to France to record at Château de Rouville, a studio famous for hosting Elton John, Pink Floyd, and David Bowie. The Château was isolated, surrounded by farmland and forests, an ideal place to focus. Barry, Maurice, and Robin, along with their longtime producer Arif Martin, set up in the main recording room and got to work. Over the course of a few weeks, they wrote several songs for the soundtrack. How Deep Is Your Love came first, a lush ballad that showcased their harmonies. Night Fever followed, a mid-tempo track with a groovy bass line. Both were strong. Both fit the disco mold. But Stigwood kept pushing. "We need one more," he said. "Something with more drive. Something for the opening of the film." The Bee Gees didn't have anything. They'd been writing for weeks. They were creatively drained. But Stigwood's deadline was approaching. The film was being edited. They needed the song now. One night. Accounts vary, but most sources place it in late 1977. Barry, Maurice, and Robin stayed late in the studio. It was past midnight. The Château was quiet except for the hum of recording equipment. They sat together, trying to come up with something. Anything that could work. Barry sat at the piano, playing chords. Nothing felt right. Everything sounded like something they'd already done. Maurice picked up a pair of drumsticks and started tapping a rhythm on the edge of a table. Robin hummed melodies, trying to find something that clicked. Then Maurice started tapping his foot. Not on a drum, just on the floor. A simple rhythm. Boom tap tap. Boom tap tap. It was hypnotic. Repetitive. Driving. Barry stopped playing piano and listened. "Do that again," he said. Maurice tapped his foot. Boom tap tap. Boom tap tap. "That's it," Barry said. "That's the beat." Barry went back to the piano. He started playing along with Maurice's foot rhythm, building chords around it. The beat was infectious. It made you want to move. Robin joined in, clapping his hands in time. The three brothers locked into the groove. Then Barry did something unexpected. He started singing, not in his normal voice, but in falsetto, a high, almost feminine pitch. The Bee Gees had experimented with falsetto before on songs like Jive Talkin' and You Should Be Dancing, but it still felt risky. Not every audience accepted it. Some critics called it gimmicky, but Barry believed in it. Our voices blend better in falsetto, he'd said. It makes us sound like one voice, not three. Barry sang the opening line. Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk. I'm a woman's man, no time to talk. The melody was immediate, catchy, urgent. Maurice and Robin joined in on the harmony, their voices blending with Barry's in perfect falsetto. The sound was distinctive, higher than most male rock voices, but powerful, confident, almost otherworldly. That's working, Maurice said, still tapping his foot. Barry kept going. The verses came quickly. The lyrics weren't complicated. They were about survival, about pushing through tough times, about staying alive in a world that wanted to knock you down. It was street-level poetry, working-class resilience, and it fit perfectly with what they knew about the film's story. The chorus was simple but effective. Stayin' alive, stayin' alive. Ah, ha, 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 stayin' alive. The ah, ha, ha part, a rhythmic chant more than a lyric, became instantly memorable. It was infectious. You couldn't not sing along. By the time the sun came up, the Bee Gees had the basic structure of Stayin' Alive. Verses, chorus, bridge, all of it written in one night. They'd recorded a rough demo, just vocals and piano, with Maurice tapping the rhythm. It was raw, but it was there. Barry called Robert Stigwood the next day. We've got something, he said. Over the next few days, the Bee Gees and their production team, Arif Mardin, Albie Galutin, and Carl Richardson, worked to flesh out Stayin' Alive. They brought in session musicians. Dennis Bryan, the band's drummer, replicated Maurice's foot tap rhythm on a full drum kit, refining it into the iconic beat that would define the song. Blue Weaver added a synthesizer line, a pulsing, robotic sound that gave the track a futuristic edge. The bass line was critical. It needed to be funky, driving, propulsive. The team experimented for hours, layering bass guitars and synths until they found the perfect groove. When they played it back, everyone in the room knew this was the one. Barry, Maurice, and Robin recorded the final vocals together, standing around a single microphone, their voices blending in three-part harmony. The falsetto was front and center. It was a risk, but they committed to it fully. If the song was going to work, it would work because of that distinctive, high-pitched sound. The final mix was completed in early 1977. When Robert Stigwood heard it, he smiled. This is the opening, he said. This is how we start the movie. Saturday Night Fever premiered in December 1977. The film told the story of Tony Manero, a young man from Brooklyn who works a dead-end job during the week but comes alive on the weekends at a local disco. John Travolta played Tony, and his performance, cocky, vulnerable, electrifying, became iconic. The opening scene of the film features Tony walking down a Brooklyn street, carrying a can of paint, strutting to the beat of Stayin' Alive. The camera follows his feet, his hips, his confident swagger. He's in his element. The music is his soundtrack. That scene, Tony strutting to Stayin' Alive, became one of the most famous sequences in cinema history. The film was a massive success. It grossed over $230 million worldwide, becoming one of the highest-grossing films of the 1970s. But the soundtrack was even bigger. The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, featuring the Bee Gees songs, became the best-selling soundtrack of all time, selling over 40 million copies. It stayed at #1 on the Billboard 200 for 24 consecutive weeks. It won the Grammy for Album of the Year, and Stayin' Alive was the centerpiece. Released as a single in December 1977, it shot to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in February 1978, staying there for 4 weeks. It topped charts around the world. Radio stations played it constantly. Discos blasted it. People bought the single in droves. The Bee Gees, who'd been written off just a year earlier, were suddenly the biggest band in the world, but the success came with complications. The Bee Gees became synonymous with disco. And while disco was massive in the late 1970s, it was also polarizing. Rock fans hated it. Punk fans hated it. By 1979, a backlash was brewing. On July 12, 1979, a radio DJ in Chicago organized Disco Demolition Night at Comiskey Park, where thousands of disco records were blown up in a stadium. The event turned into a riot, and disco, as a genre, was suddenly seen as uncool. The Bee Gees were collateral damage. Radio stations stopped playing their music. Their albums stopped selling. By the early 1980s, they were struggling again, not because their music was bad, but because they'd become too closely associated with a genre that had fallen out of favor. But Stayin' Alive endured. Even as disco faded, the song remained. It transcended its genre. It became a cultural touchstone, a piece of shared musical history that people couldn't let go of. Then, in the 2000s, something unexpected happened. Medical professionals noticed something about Stayin' Alive. Its tempo was perfect for CPR. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, requires chest compressions at a rate of 100 to 120 beats per minute. Stayin' Alive is exactly 103 beats per minute. The rhythm of the song matches the rhythm needed to pump blood through a person's body during cardiac arrest. In 2008, the American Heart Association began recommending that people performing CPR hum or think of Stayin' Alive to maintain the correct tempo. CPR instructors started using the song in training sessions. Push to the beat of Stayin' Alive, they'd say. The song, written about emotional survival, was now helping people survive physically. Robert Gibb found this development both amusing and meaningful. "We called it Stayin' Alive because it was about surviving tough times," he said in a 2010 interview. "I never imagined it would literally help people stay alive. But I'm honored. If our song saves even one life, that's worth more than all the #1 hits in the world." The connection between the song and CPR gave Stayin' Alive a second cultural life. It was featured in TV shows like The Office, in a famous CPR training scene, and became a meme. But it also reinforced the song's legacy. This wasn't just a disco hit. It was a song about resilience, about survival, about pushing through. Maurice Gibb passed away in 2003 at the age of 53 from complications following surgery. His death devastated Barry and Robin. Maurice had been the glue that held the band together, the peacemaker, the rhythm keeper, the brother who could make everyone laugh. Without him, the Bee Gees couldn't continue. Robin Gibb passed away in 2012 at the age of 62 after a long battle with cancer. Barry, the eldest brother, was left alone. He'd lost both of his brothers, his bandmates, his collaborators, his lifelong companions. In interviews after Robin's death, Barry talked about how difficult it was to perform Bee Gees songs. "When I sing them, I hear Maurice and Robin's voices," he said, "and they're not there. It's too painful." But he also talked about the legacy of their music. "We wrote hundreds of songs," Barry said, "but Stayin' Alive might be the one people remember most. And you know what? We wrote it in one night. One night. We had no idea it would become what it became." Today, over 45 years after it was written, Stayin' Alive is still everywhere. It's been streamed over 2 billion times on Spotify. It's played at weddings, parties, sporting events. It's featured in movies, TV shows, and commercials. It's taught in CPR classes. It's a piece of cultural DNA, woven into the fabric of modern life. And it all started with 3 brothers in a French chateau, staying up past midnight, trying to meet a deadline. Maurice tapping his foot, Barry pushing his voice into falsetto, Robin adding harmony. One night, one song, one rhythm that would outlast them all. The Bee Gees didn't set out to write an anthem. They were just trying to finish a soundtrack. But sometimes, the songs we create in a hurry, under pressure, with no time to overthink, those are the ones that last forever. Stayin' Alive wasn't just a disco hit. It was a statement, a declaration, a reminder that no matter how tough things get, you keep moving, you keep pushing, you keep staying alive. And that message, written in one night in 1977, still resonates today.